So I just got back from Florida after playing WWE 2K25's full build. Now, what do you guys want to talk about? Let's talk about the island, because to my surprise, this was available for us to play at the Creator Fest, and honestly, I didn't hate it. One thing I will go ahead and say about the island is I can actually see myself grinding out the badges as I did in NBA 2K. Now, do I think this mode was necessary? Do I think this mode was needed? Yes and no. I mean, I'm not a big online guy anymore just because the servers never really hold up for anybody. But even given that I'm not a big online guy anymore, given the incentive to actually play online and earn something, I think it certainly gives me more reason to play. And I know exactly what some of you are going to be saying. I thought the same thing as well. Could the time and resources that were spent on the island as a project have gone to something that fans have been clamoring for more, like a story designer? Maybe it could have. Maybe it could have gone to story designer, and that could have been the big return this year. But to me, it feels like they're taking this franchise in an NBA 2K direction. I think it's obvious to anyone who looks at this franchise. Microtransactions are only a growing thing in gaming, and while that is unfortunate, and while I think I shouldn't have to be online for every single game, and I shouldn't have to have a connection for every single game, and I shouldn't have to buy microtransactions and VC for every game, and this kind of thing. I know some of you out there are going to be kind of pedantic and be like, well, Deonte, there's actually some games out there that you can play offline. Listen, the fact that I have to be signed into online to play GTA 4 or Red Dead Redemption 2 in the big 2025 is a problem with gaming, because all I want to play is single player, and yet I have to be connected to online services? Why? Anyway, that's a discussion for another day. You guys know how much I love Rockstar Games. We'll get to that in another retrospective. I did find with the island that there was actually a lot to do in that initial period. Like, there were missions popping up you could go ahead and play online. Whether you want to like it or not, it's going to make them a ton of money, and I think if I'm trying to be optimistic about where that could lead and what it's going to do for the franchise, maybe the island making money and providing an extra outlet for online players will only lead to more resources and manpower when it comes to developing the gameplay and the other modes like My Rise or even Universe mode. And to be honest, when it comes to the actual content of the island, I did progress a decent amount in the island online, and I honestly didn't find myself wanting to stop playing. You know, it held up pretty well. Of course, naturally, that was with what, like, I don't know, 40 creators on there, 40, 50 creators, so it's going to be a much bigger test when the entire world is trying to play it. That's my main concern for this mode, because it's not as if there was a lack of things to do. It's kind of your general layout that you'd expect from NBA 2K. You've got like your Nike store, you've got your different stores that are referencing wrestlers, like there's one for Rhea Ripley out there. It's kind of what you'd expect, and the island itself, at least what we were playing, I don't know if they plan to expand it, it wasn't super huge. It's not like groundbreaking, you know, it's not crazy. And another thing I will say about the development of this mode is that when you go ahead and see the cutscenes with the people talking to you, instead of it actually being an animated cutscene or anything, it's in that WWE 2K originals, like 2K20 style, where it's just kind of, you know, someone with a different tone, like R-Truth is making different faces, which I'm not crazy about. You know, there's a story there, there's a story to go ahead, there's some fun spoilers, which I won't go ahead and spoil, but there's some fun things that happen as you progress through the chapter. And I also know that it was quite a pressing concern for a lot of people thinking about how things are going to be unlocked via VC and whether or not they're going to be too expensive. I saw some expensive things in there, I won't lie to you. Things that realistically should just be available in the main game, because in case you didn't know, a lot of this stuff you've got to unlock in the island to go ahead and use it in the rest of the game, which I couldn't be more against. A lot of people were saying that to them, like, what are we doing here? I think it's kind of whack locking things behind certain modes, the same way they did with My Faction a couple years ago, and then they learned from their mistakes. So, but in terms of longevity, where do I see this mode landing in the grand scheme of 2K and all these modes? I think it'll live if the servers can handle that many players online at once. We haven't seen the true test yet, because even in the small sample size of us playing it at Creator Fest, there were some problems with the online that I heard and that I saw between other creators. So I'm a little bit anxious about how it's going to play online, but who knows? Miracles have happened, and maybe it'll be okay. But I did go ahead and check out Universe mode in this build, and I was pleasantly surprised. So I've become somewhat of a Universe mode hater over the last few years. I felt like the mode had already peaked, and it was time to focus these resources on something else, like a story designer or a new rendition of the sandbox mode in these games. I was also not initially super crazy about promos coming back, but after checking out promos, I actually really like this return. Universe mode now also features King of the Ring tournaments on the pay-per-views, along with the ability to have PLEs on any day of the week and have shows at any time in the week as well. You can also have 2-night PLEs as well, as is a growing trend in real life. But getting back to promos, one of my biggest gripes about this system before was that it felt quite lifeless and a waste of time. But getting back to the old promo system, I genuinely before just preferred imagining the stories in my head like I was fucking Mankind, like, so this week John Cena, he beat CM Punk. I'm gonna keep it a buck with you guys. I'm still very sick right now. I'm forcing this energy like you wouldn't believe, and that made me feel quite dizzy. I might just pass out on video. What? But I genuinely prefer doing that than looking at the generic dialogue of the old system. Now, the promo system isn't perfect yet by any means. I still really wish that the champions came out with the title just to add a bit more to that realism, and even if we had more places where the promos could take place, that would be ideal. Like, for example, on Raw, you'll see interviews backstage, or entering the arena, or at the top of the ramp, in the parking lot at the side of the crowd. But the choices in the promo system as you're cutting the promo were very smooth and seamless, and starting brawls off the back of promos also felt smooth, which I can get behind. I will go ahead and say those brawls coming off the back of promos, I wish they were a little bit shorter and more, you know, like just start me off with a finisher so I can go ahead and win the promo, and or they can win the promo. It feels like almost you get thrown into a match and then you kind of just awkwardly trying to beat each other up, get the momentum up, and then you know, if that was real life, for example, maybe they go for a finisher and someone rolls out the ring. Maybe that kind of cutscene happens, or maybe I go ahead and hit you with a finisher and it cuts into a standing tall cutscene. Like, you know what I mean? Instead of the way it is where you beat them up for a while, hit them with a finisher, and then it just does the thing as if you've won a match and you're all groggy and you're like, yeah, you didn't win a match, you won a promo, motherfucker. Come on. Maybe this is me admitting that over the years I've been a little bit too harsh on UM, alright? UI. And plus, not to mention, UM started... Me and UM are cool, but UM completely understands that as soon as story designer is announced to be returning in January 2026 for WWE 2K25, I'm dropping UM like it's a bad habit. Ain't that right, UM?
Go fuck yourself!
Oh my gosh. So I'm not going to say a ton about my GM just yet. I didn't play a ton of it because I didn't want to deep dive too much until I got the game for myself. With that being said, Phoenix Nitro keeps dropping into my comment section, he keeps dropping into my DMs, talking all this trash about how he's the better general manager, to which me and literally the entire world would go ahead and say, who the hell is Phoenix Nitro? But in short, I was very happy with the changes to my GM for offline play. You've got bigger budgets, increased roster sizes and talent pools, cross-brand PLEs. However, the downside of this whole my GM upgrade is that online my GM is quite limited. Because for some reason, they decided to go ahead and introduce online my GM, but you can't actually play or watch the matches that are happening. You can just simulate them, to which I say, what's the point? Like, I feel as if they missed the entire point of why online MyGM would have been so legendary. Being able to go head to head and see your superstars doing battle for you is like most of the appeal. Or even playing as them, you know? But I mean, I'm sure in time, you know, this will be added, but it's one problem I have with these games really nowadays. And it's one thing that I've always found quite jarring about the sports game genre. It's that now realistically, for these changes to be made, they're not going to upgrade these things in a patch. It's not as if they're going to go ahead and drop a patch where we can play matches in MyGM online and we can watch them, and we're going to have to wait until 2K26. This yearly release cycle means we're going to have to wait all the way until next year to get these things that really should have been in the game this year. And maybe I'm being a spoiled brat with this, but I feel like for as happy as I am that online MyGM is here and we're going to keep developing in this over the years, I would have personally rather not seen it this year. If you needed more time to perfect it and have the ability to play and watch matches online, why not just go ahead and wait till next year? I feel like bringing something in that's kind of bare bones and then being like, this is a new feature, but it doesn't really have much yet, wait until next year. It's a bit, I don't like it. I'm not a fan of that. We're edging closer and closer to the next generation of consoles again already, so when we make that jump, are we doomed to repeat the cycle of things, like for example promos and online MyGM being removed, only for the cycle to repeat itself where for 2K29 they say, hey, these things are back on next gen, and it's just an ongoing cycle of things being removed and then taking too long to be added back. I really hope that isn't the case. I hope that even with the technology leap, they continue to build on things unlike previous jumps. But going back to a positive thing about MyGM that I like, it's the fact that rivalries can now be finished outside of the pay-per-view. So you can finish rivalry on Monday Night Raw, on SmackDown as well. Like, it doesn't have to be finished at the pay-per-view, which I feel like is a lot closer to real life. And I really like that feature. I really like that change. And of course, you've also got new match types in MyGM like Gauntlet, Eliminator, along with a bunch of new GMs as well in the mode. Another thing I loved about this game is the damage on the superstars. I really noticed it in my collab with Johnny Gargano. Like, the damage and the welts that form on superstars this year is serious. And same goes for the blood damage on the superstars too. Because I know back in a game such as 2K19 when you had the mods and whatnot, you could get extra damage mods and extra blood mods. But I think it's something that really helps add to the realism of the game, and I'm a big fan of these quality of life changes, of which there were quite a few I noticed that you may have seen, but stuff like the taunt camera or the ability to move the camera around during matches with third person, or even during entrances. I love it, I love it, I love it. You sadly can't move that entrance cam completely around, like around the arena and everything, but again, I imagine that's something they will add in future games. Also, I have to go ahead and say, don't make the same mistake I did. When it comes to that whole third person camera, I was a little bit confused at first, but you have to hold down R2 if you want to go ahead and be able to pick up your opponent and move the camera around as well. I was so baffled at first. I was like, wait, is this a massive oversight? But no, I am the oversight. Speaking of quality of life improvements, they did go ahead and add a new mini game, or like a new set of mini games in the ladder match, which I quite liked. Now, let's briefly touch on another new thing in 2K25 that I played, Bloodline Rules. I really like Bloodline Rules. I think the utter chaos of just being able to call in various superstars to your raid or having the reverse happen to you is awesome. I kind of wish we had these kinds of mechanics in every match type, honestly. You can also now associate tag teams in 2K25 with a larger faction. So, for example, when creating a team, you can have the tag team of, let's say, Dakota Kai and Io Sky associated with Kairi and Asuka as a bigger faction, obviously damage control with multiple teams inside it, which is really cool.